All right. Let's see if this works here. Okay. So, guys, I don't know who all can see me and who can't. We're gonna just sort of take this one step at a time. But as of right now, I cannot get on YouTube. And I'm kind of looking at things here. It doesn't look like we're on YouTube. It looks like we're on Facebook, and it looks like we're on Twitter. It does not look like we're on YouTube. So, let's see here. Oh, here we go. Oh, we are. We are here. All right. So, this is weird. So, I can't... All right. So, I can't access... Let me see if I can just see the chat. Oh, I can. Hello, everybody. What's up, everyone? All right, so I can't access... This is something. What's up? Happy Music Monday. I'm very thrilled to report that we're live. So I can't access my, I couldn't access my creator studio, but I don't go live directly through YouTube. I use a service. So, like, I use Restream is what it's called. So, I guess we're live, but I can see the chat. Good morning, everybody. What's up, Lee? What's up, Karen? What's up, Angela? Howdy, howdy. What's up, James? What's up, Melissa? I see everybody. I see everybody. And you guys were getting notifications. Holy shit. What's up, Alex? What's up, Lee? What's up, Speaking Truth? What's up, Sue? What's up, Machismo? Thank you for your patience. Sorry about the confusion. You'll notice that the title is old. The title is not updated. That's because I wasn't able to get into the stream today. So unfortunately, it is the wrong title. It's not February 28th. It's another day, but I'll fix that later in post. So happy Music Monday. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. And I'm thrilled to say we made it, huh? I'm thrilled to say we made it. All right, so... And I have to look at this via the actual page itself. What I had to do to get here was I had to just go to my own YouTube page and just watch it. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm doing this and I'm seeing myself just slightly delayed. So it's a little different today, guys. Anyway, I'm over explaining this, but anyway, we're going to be fine. And we're going to be able to do this. So let's rock and roll, huh? Let's rock and roll. Literally rock and roll, because it's Music Monday. So, and I have a fun question today that I'm pretty stoked about. So we'll do the question first, and then there's a Music Monday story I wanted to go to. So you guys probably saw this already. Boom. This was the cover of a recent Rolling Stone. Nancy Pelosi's there, along with Johanna Hayes, Ilhan Omar, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't really want to talk about this article per se. I just wanted to show you guys this, because obviously one of these things is not like the other. Goes without saying, one of these things is not like the other. That being Nancy Pelosi. So I wanted to get your guys' take on the whole thing, but also, here's my take on it, and I go a little bit further here, you know, because some people were like, I don't like the fact that Nancy Pelosi's in that picture, and I echo that sentiment. I think she is pretty out of place there, but I go a step further. I don't like the idea of Nancy Pelosi being on the cover of Rolling Stone, but I also don't like the idea of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being on the cover of Rolling Stone. I don't like the idea of Ilhan Omar being on the cover of Rolling Stone. And I don't like the idea of Johanna Hayes being on the cover of Rolling Stone. And here's why. So Rolling Stone is not quite what it used to be. It still has some great contributors. It's still, a very influential magazine. But, back in the big days of print media, Rolling Stone was a big behemoth. And the cover of Rolling Stone, that was a big frickin' deal, I mean, it was a rite of passage for bands. It was a step in one's musical career for artists. We get all kinds of thrills and take all kinds of pills, but the thrill that you love the most is the thrill that'll get you when you see your picture on the cover of a Rolling Stone. Right? That was from the movie Almost Famous, but that was something bands used to say. So the cover of Rolling Stone was a very sacred thing. And I think, my opinion is that cover should be reserved for a creative. That cover should be either to a musician or something music adjacent. Like a writer, like I'm all about Hunter Thompson being on the cover of Rolling Stone. He was on the cover at least one time. Kurt Vonnegut, I believe, hit the cover of Rolling Stone. I'm all about that. Or a comedian. Obviously, I'm okay with comedians. Or an actor, even. But I feel like a politician, they shouldn't be given the cover. Now, you might say, hey, Ron, there's been a long history of politicians being on the cover. I know that. I'm not for that. Now, they also have a long history of political coverage, and that I'm 110% for. Hunter Thompson used to write brilliant pieces for Rolling Stone, and now, more recently, we still have Matt Taibbi, who has written some brilliant pieces for Rolling Stone. There are still some great political pieces in Rolling Stone to this day. Is it the magazine that it used to be? No, not quite. It's certainly... the media's just evolved. There's just more outlets now. It's just not quite the behemoth in the room it used to be. We already mentioned that. But my personal take is that I just don't think... I think there should be a certain amount of reverence granted to that which is the cover of Rolling Stone. And I don't think it should be given to a politician. Do I feel strongly to the point where, I'm boycotting it now? But, no, I don't... feel that strongly. I'm just saying, if I was on the editorial board and they showed that cover to me and they were like, you stoked for it? And I was like, no, I don't think... Why don't you just have... You can still have a subheading, by the way. People are like, well, Ron, what if it's somebody... what if the main lead story is concerning something in politics? Well, you can still have a blurb about it. You can give the cover picture to somebody else in every case. So in this, for instance, they could have a blurb like, we're covering the Green New Deal. Everyone from Pelosi to Ocasio-Cortez, what are they saying about it? But then they could have given the cover to somebody else. So my big thing, I don't think that the cover of Rolling Stone is appropriate for a or maybe appropriate's not even the right way to put it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. And if I was on an editorial board, I would vote it down 100% of the time. Even if it was a politician I liked. Whether it's one I like or don't like, it's irrelevant. I would still be like, nope, I'm not for it. You want to see Tulsi Gabbard on it? No. Bernie Sanders? No. We're skewering George W. Bush. But no, don't put him on the cover. Have a little blurb. Put an artist on the cover. Now, the one thing, if it's an artist going into politics, what do you do there, Ron? And honestly, that's an interesting... I guess, if it was someone like an Al Franken, for instance, who, as of recent, I've disagreed with a lot. But, just looking at it from an artist standpoint, he's a comedian who decided to enter politics. I feel like in that case, yeah, that's an exception. That guy had been writing for years. He's been in show business for years. But, so of course there are some kind of crossover exceptions, and I get that. But, that particular, for instance, would be an exception. Saying, hey, Ron, Bill Clinton plays the saxophone. What about him? No, that's not. He's a politician. When somebody is dominantly a politician first, I just don't think the cover of Rolling Stone's necessary. What do you guys think? And I'm sure some of you disagree with me. Some of you probably think like, well, they have a long history of good political coverage, so why not give them the cover? That's a fair argument. I just feel like it has a certain amount of reverence. It's a sacred space, and I feel like it ought to be reserved for an artist. Let me see what you guys are saying. All right, so navigating's a little different today. Janai says, Nancy is loving the attention. She could care less about any of their policies, but she is all for the media coverage. That's probably true. Lady says, Rolling Stone really doesn't need politicians, although I love the progressive ladies on that picture, but yes, I see your point. Steve says, my Rolling Stone subscription ran out years ago. Don't really feel like I'm missing much, even in terms of music coverage. Yeah, I mean, you can just kind of read it online if you want to, and yeah, there's a lot of other stuff out there now. Tim says, might as well have George H.W. Bush and Cheney having a tickle fight on the cover. Statutory says, who reads magazines anymore? Well, I mean, I still read a lot of articles from magazines, but I always read them online. Ron doesn't like having non-musicians on Rolling Stone cover. No, I didn't say that. I said I don't like having non-artists on the cover of Rolling Stone. I feel like the cover of Rolling Stone should be for an artist. It doesn't necessarily have to be a musician, but it should be an artist of some sort. And, as far as politicians goes, they get to be on the cover of literally everything else. Pretty much everything else. Time magazine, you name it. And again, I don't have like I'm not like, I'm boycotting now. Like I don't have, I'm just saying if I was on the editorial board, 100% of the time, I'd be against a politician being on the cover of Rolling Stone. Whether it's a politician I like or don't like. Dana, what if they put Trump on Rolling Stone? I'd be against it. I'm all about them having an article about Trump, and it would probably be criticizing Trump. But I'd be against him being on the cover. So yeah. Jilly agrees. And, magazines do take up a lot of paper, so it's good to read them online. I'm all for that. Best scene of all time, apology line. I've never heard of that card, no. Can I get it online? We should have a zine. We should totally have a Zine Music Monday episode where we talk about zines. There's still, what's pretty amazing in Pasadena where I live. Daniel brings up. Wait, hang on. I gotta resent. Trump was in show business. Oh, that's a good point. So Trump, again, he technically meets that exception I was talking about earlier. I didn't even think about that. But that's very true. Trump was in, I feel like for him, show business should go in quotes. I mean, he was a reality TV host. But yeah, I guess technically by the criteria I gave, then Trump should be one of those exceptions. But I feel like when you're president, the exception line kind of goes away for you. I feel like when you're president, I don't know. And I feel like calling Trump an artist is very much a stretch. I mean, even even if I, despite the fact that I disagree with pretty much everything the guy is about, even if that wasn't the case, calling him an artist is very much a stretch. So I feel like Trump does not make that exception. No. I feel like Trump does not make that exception. However, Josephine, Ronald Reagan would. And again, I don't like Ronald Reagan at all. But Ronald Reagan was an actor for years. So if they would have put Ronald Reagan on the cover right when he became president, I would say, well, that's fair. That's fair. Anyway, we mentioned zines. I accidentally stumbled one day, and it was such a beautiful stumbling upon thing. I stumbled upon a zine festival in my neighborhood of Pasadena, California, and it was really freaking cool, and it was free, and there were all kinds of zines everywhere. And, yeah. Celeste, did you watch Bernie's campaign kickoff speech? I watched parts of it. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I did watch part of it. And we're going to be talking about it some today. So, yes. And, yeah. So, let's go to this story. We got a Music Monday story here. And it is from Rolling Stone, which is interesting. So, boom. Aretha Franklin suspected $178,000 in theft prior to death. Prosecutors are investigating whether someone cashed singer's check without permission 2 months before Queen of Soul's death. Michigan prosecutors revealed Friday that Aretha Franklin suspected that someone stole nearly $180,000 from her in the months prior to her August 2018 death. The investigation into the theft remains ongoing, Oakland County prosecutors told the Detroit News, although the Queen of Soul's death complicates the situation. In June of 2018, Franklin filed a complaint with the Bloomfield Township Police that one of her checks was missing and believed stolen. But unfortunately, with her death, it is difficult to determine whether she actually passed it on to someone else who had the permission and authority to cash it. The check was for $178,000. As the Franklin estate attorney David Bennett said in December, after the estate paid a portion of an outstanding $6.3 million to the IRS, Franklin had a lot of checks lying around that she never cashed. And they even had to get some of them reissued because they were so... Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having so much money that you just forget? Oh, shit. I never cashed that check. And this is Aretha Franklin, so I doubt they were for small amounts of money. They were probably for shows that she did. So it was probably for a nice chunk of change. Can you imagine just, oh shit, I had that $178,000 check I forgot about. I better go deposit that. You know what? Dinner's on me tonight. Totally what a pleasant surprise. I get jazzed if I find a $5 bill in my jeans pocket. I get jazzed when that happens. I get jazzed when I find a couple quarters in my dash. When I keep changing my dash. When I find a couple quarters and I'm like, oh shit, laundry. Yeah. I get jazzed for that. Oh shit, 178 grand. My bad. Anyway, but Aretha Franklin was amazing. Rest in power. So let's see what else is going on here. All right, so and then she had to pay $6.3 million to the IRS. Investigators have been in contact with the person who allegedly cashed the check, but declined to release their name or their relation to Franklin. It may take more evidence or someone coming forward with more information about the transaction. So at the time of Franklin's death, the singer estate was reportedly worth $80 million. Now, I actually did not realize this. I think I might have read about this when it first happened, but I don't recall. However, she died without a will. Aretha Franklin didn't have a will. So I don't know what her family situation is like. I mean, I remember, I'm pretty sure we actually talked about it on this show when she passed, if I'm not mistaken, but I'd imagine there is some butting of heads that is going on, on whatever her family is remaining. If there's $80 million floating around, she had no will. there's going to be some butting of the heads. That goes without saying. And apparently this is one of them. Apparently nearly $180,000, 178. So I guess they know who cashed it, but they don't know if this person had permission to cash it. So I hope they sort that out, and I hope that Aretha Franklin, her estate goes to how she would have wanted it. But I guess no one's quite sure what that is since she didn't have a will. So that is a messy situation. All right. So speaking of messy situations, let's go to some media shenanigans, shall we? All right, sorry, I'm a little slow today because things are all different for me because of the YouTube thing being quirky. Now's a good time to shout out our sponsors, ZT.com, ZHITEA.com, their tea kind of rules, and microbinge.com. Looking for a social media alternative? Check out microbinge.com. It's a new social media platform. I'm on it. We can be friends. Boom. All right. Boom. Dem 2020 candidate Tulsi Gabbard touts praise from Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Okay, what's going on here? Representative Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat from Hawaii, has launched a long shot bid for the presidency in 2020. Why a long shot? Because the media smears her at every opportunity. That's why. Aside from her low name recognition, Gabbard is also loathed by many Democrats. That's thanks to her questionable past on gay marriage. This, according to the article, that's thanks to her questionable past position on gay marriage and brilliant decision in 2017 to go on an unsanctioned fact-finding trip to visit mass murderer Bashar al-Assad in Syria, only to return with pro-regime talking points. Okay, so let's address that right there. Yes, she did have a past where she was very homophobic. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, that was in her past. She grew up with a very strict religious upbringing, and that was what she was taught. As she grew up, she evolved from those points of view. She has apologized for it many times, and she has a 100% score from the Human Rights Campaign. That means she votes for pro-LGBT 100% of the time. She has a 100% score. Not an 80% score, not a 75% score, 100. She has a 100% rating from them. She has apologized for those views many, many times. And, and to be totally fair, it's not like she just held them when she was, 12 years old or whatever and didn't know anybody. She was in her 20s, still held those views. But I think that it's never too late for somebody to change and evolve, and I feel like she has addressed that many times over. The Syria thing, what she did was her job. She went to Syria for herself to see what was going on. She has a submission of dealing with people, of speaking with people, and she frames her own takes on the situation instead of just accepting what the corporate media shoves down our throats. Somebody in her position who deals with foreign affairs, who has foreign policy experience, that type of work ethic and pursuit of the truth should be applauded. But she's actually faced the opposite. Okay, so let's go back to the article that already is starting off strong. So it makes sense she would seek unconventional ways to get her message out. This is according to the article. So now they bring up Tucker Carlson. She went on Tucker Carlson, and they spoke about interventionism. Carlson and his ideological acolytes are fond of Gabbard. They share a similar skepticism of the alleged atrocities carried out by dictators like Assad. Both question his use of chemical weapons. Now, here's an interesting part in this article. It shouldn't have to be pointed out to Gabbard and Carlson that two ideas can coexist, that Assad is a brutal dictator who uses sarin on his own civilians, and that the United States should not wage reckless foreign wars. Can't that same message, or at least a similar message, be applied to the corporate media and all of the Democrats and Republicans who favor regime changes? who favor our intervention over there? Can it be, hey, nobody's saying Maduro is perfect. Nobody's saying that there have not been many errors since he's been around in Venezuela. What we're saying is we have no business supporting an illegal coup. Or same with Syria. No one's saying that Assad's a great guy, but people are saying that there is a civil conflict there. There's a civil conflict there that's very messy and very complex. And just kind of taking what the media says without any type of investigation, bombing a country before the operation to inspect chemical weapons even completed an investigation, concluding that you know all the answers, and bombing a country, which is what the United States did in Syria, that's not okay. It doesn't matter how you feel about Assad one way or another. We can't just shoot first and ask later, but we do all the time. Can't that same message be applied the other way around? Why does Tulsi Gabbard in particular need to hear that message? And also, getting to this particular segment, which I've watched this segment, Tucker Carlson mentions time and time again that him and Tulsi Gabbard agree on virtually nothing. They disagree on pretty much every issue, except for when it comes to interventionism. That's one of the things that Tucker has been outspoken about. In some recent, for instances, overall, I don't know if you can say that about him. If you look at his entire past, I'm sure there's been situations where he's been more pro-intervention. I don't recall him ever speaking out against Iraq or anything like that. I'm not saying it did or didn't happen. I don't know for sure, but I don't recall him ever being outspoken against Iraq or anything like that. But when it comes to Syria, he has been outspoken as far as, we shouldn't be doing that stuff. We shouldn't be intervening. So that's one point of agreement he does have with Tulsi Gabbard. And he let her speak about it. They both pointed out that they disagree on pretty much everything else. But what does the corporate media try to do? Well, and especially in this particular instance, in this particular article, they try to draw that association immediately. They try to, because they're hoping you look no further than the headline. And let's take a look at this headline. The headline is, look at everything that's in bold. Candidate Tulsi Gabbard touts praise from Fox News host Tucker Carlson. They're hoping you don't read anything other than that, so that you associate Tulsi Gabbard with Tucker Carlson. Two people who disagree on probably over 99% or 90% of things. Actually, 99 might be accurate. They agree on this one issue, so they talked about it. Tulsi talks truth on wars. So they're highlighting the fact that she shared it. So that headline could have been, Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson see eye to eye on intervention. Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson oppose war in this, for instance. Well, that'd be kind of too long of a headline, but you see the idea here. They don't want to give any leading details on the topic in the headline, which they could have easily done. They just want you to associate Tulsi Gabbard with Tucker Carlson. And again, they disagree on most things. This is the one thing they have in common. You could have even made the headline, Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson discuss one thing they have in common. That would actually be, I bet a lot of people would click that. I bet a lot of the general public would be like, well, I wonder what that one thing is. Then they'd find out, well, it's intervention. In some, for instances. So, and again, is Tulsi Gabbard a perfect candidate? Of course not. Is she worthy of criticism? Of course. But, again, there's a big difference between worthwhile criticism and smear pieces. And when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders, there are going to be a lot of smear pieces because they're not who the establishment wants. And it's important that you know the difference. And in this case, here's another smear piece. Here's another smear piece. They bring up the fact that she went to Syria herself to figure out what was going on, to try to better assess what we should or shouldn't be doing over there. And guess what? We shouldn't be doing stuff over there. That's what she concluded, because she went there herself. Because she has foreign policy experience, and she went there herself. She's not going to take the word of what our corporate media just spews out. Because when you do that, that's when you bomb countries before an investigation even happens. That's what you do. That's what Trump does. I'd like a president that doesn't do that. So, when you see pieces like that just highlight those things as a reason to smear her, instead of saying why the Democrats really don't like her. They don't like her because she's a genuine non-interventionist. She's an actual peace candidate. And there's a long history of Republicans and Democrats. There's that bipartisanship for you. Getting peace candidates out of the way as soon as they can. Who were the first people kicked off the debate stage in 2008? Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. Two people that have very little in common. Dennis Kucinich, Ron Paul, very little in common. What's one thing they do have in common? They were peace candidates, non-interventionists. And here you go. Tucker Carlson, Tulsi Gabbard. Very, very little in common. Hardly anything in common. What's one thing they do have in common? Non-interventionism. But they just want you to make that association. They don't want you to think critically about interventionism or non-interventionism. They just want you to associate Tulsi Gabbard with Tucker Carlson. That was the point of that article. That was that article's goal. It wasn't to inform you. It wasn't to give you a perspective. Because all it talked about was how, Tucker's people like her. Here's some reason the Democrats don't like her. And Tucker, it didn't mention that multiple times in that segment, Tucker Carlson says, we disagree on pretty much everything. Tucker Carlson says it. And Tulsi agrees. They're like, yeah, we don't, and she even says, thanks for letting me talk about this. So if that article, and I'm even saying, hey, you could have engaged in a little bit. I get it. You want to have a juicy headline. I get that. That's the world we live in. You want people to click your article or click your video. You want the headline to be attractive. You can't make a totally boring whatever headline. So I'm saying, hey, here's the one thing Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson have in common. That could have been the headline. Pretty clickbaity. And people would be like, wow, I wonder what that one thing is. And it would have been more honest. So I guess technically I wouldn't make it clickbait, right? I mean, if a headline is kind of juicy, but it's actually honest, then that technically means it's not clickbait. I just misused that term, right? I'm pretty sure I did. Because clickbait is when you kind of mislead. I guess it's just a juicy headline. Like, you're just making a good headline. You're making an eyeball, I think you guys know what I mean. But that wasn't the point of this article. The point of this article was not to unpack an issue that has some unlikely common folks involved. Some commonalities between unlikely allies, I guess you would call it. The point of this article was to try to get you, the reader, to associate Tulsi Gabbard with Tucker Carlson. That was the goal of this article. So it's an intentionally misleading smear piece. And that's how we can tell the difference. All right. Let's move on to more stuff. You can tell this is the world's first improv news show because we say stuff like, let's move on to more stuff. We don't pre-plan this shit. We just... All right. This is from Glenn Greenwald. MSNBC yet again broadcasts blatant lies, this time about Bernie Sanders' opening speech, and refuses to correct them. So I'm sure a lot of you guys saw Bernie's speech in Chicago. And, well, let's just dive into the article. This article kind of sums up what happened here. MSNBC is a dishonest political operation, not a news outlet. Somebody should just get this tattooed on themselves. I'm not the guy to do it. That's too many words. But, man, what a killer opening. That Glenn Greenwald's pretty good with the pros. MSNBC is a dishonest political operation, not a news outlet. I would say MSNBC is a PR firm for Comcast, not a news outlet. But what Glenn Greenwald said sounds cooler. His sentences, that's why he's a very successful journalist, and I'm not a journalist. That's one of the reasons why. Anyway, All right. It systematically and deliberately refuses to adopt a defining attribute of a news outlet, a willingness to acknowledge factual errors, correct them, and apologize. There's a lot of other things that they don't do that news outlets should do, but anyway, we could talk about that all day. So the most recent example is as glaring as it is malicious. On Saturday in Brooklyn, Bernie Sanders delivered his first speech, and you can see the full 2-hour event or Sanders' full 35-minute speech on YouTube. So Zerlina Maxwell, who the host identified as an MSNBC analyst. Now, what the host admitted, but Maxwell herself acknowledged, was that she was a paid official for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. All right? But she acknowledged who she was. So here's what she said. Maxwell was making gestures of approval throughout Sanders' speech and asked what the cause was. Maxwell proceeded to state demonstrable lies about that speech. She said, to be very serious about it, I clocked it. He did not mention race or gender until 23 minutes into the speech. And just for point of comparison, I went back and looked at Elizabeth Warren's opening speech, for example. She mentions race and discrimination in the first paragraph, so that's a big difference. So she was claiming he did not mention race or gender until 23 minutes into the speech. Glenn Greenwald says, that's a total lie. Sanders mentions race, gender, and discrimination multiple times at the beginning of his speech and long before the 23-minute mark, as anyone who actually watched it, which presumably includes all of the MSNBC personalities on the panel who sat silently as this lie was broadcast, obviously knew was a lie. For good measure, Maxwell repeated the same lie in a tweet. All right, so here's her tweet. She says, okay, 23 minutes in, Bernie finally mentions race and gender. All one needs to do to prove this is an obvious lie is to look at the video of Sanders' speech, which the MSNBC panel had just done. So before Sanders even began the substance of his speech, he thanked those who introduced him, saying of Sean King's anti-racist activism all over this country, and Sean King is very heavily involved with Black Lives Matter, all over this country, and I'm going to say a few words about it today and more tomorrow. People understand that we have a broken criminal justice system, and there are few people in America fighting more than Sean to change that system. In the very first sentence, Sanders spoke to define his 2020 campaign, which came at the latest at the 5-minute mark, even if one counts all the cheering, chanting, and obligatory acknowledgments that preceded the substance of his speech. Sanders claimed that the core message of his campaign is that the underlying principles of our government will not be racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, and religious bigotry. This campaign is going to end all that. In the very next passage of Sanders' speech, at most 6 minutes into it, the senator vowed that the principles of our government will be based on justice, on economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Sanders then devoted several minutes to denouncing the inequities, unfairness, and destructive effects of America's criminal justice system and the drug war, contrasting the severe punishment meted out to low-level pot and other small-time offenders to the full-scale protection and even bailout for the Wall Street tycoon who crashed the economy in 2008. So, in other words, in sum, well, let's go to the summary of the article. In sum, Sanders did not just mention race and gender once in his speech before the 23-minute mark, like Maxwell claimed, but he did so repeatedly. It was not only the major theme of the speakers who introduced him, but a primary theme of his own speech from the start, both explicitly rallying against the evils of racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, and religious bigotry, and vowing to usher in social justice and racial justice, but also launching full-scale, vehement attacks on the policies, inequalities in the criminal justice system, and immigration abuses that have as their primary targets racial and religious minorities. So that was just false, what she said. And, you know, I remember I didn't watch the whole thing, but I started it from the beginning, and I started trying to compile it for the Jimmy Dore show, because this was when we were doing our live stream on Saturday. And I remember him saying all these things, and I only watched the first, handful of minutes. I want to say I watched it most 10 minutes, because we were getting ready to go live on a stream. So all the things Glenn Greenwald mentioned, I remember hearing, and I started this speech from the beginning, and there's no way I watched 23 minutes of the speech. I watched maybe about 10, I think, at most, and that's being generous because I was preparing for the live stream. So I had to just watch a little bit to be prepared to talk about it if it was one of our topics over at the Jimmy Dore Show. So Glenn Greenwald is right. He has the video evidence supporting that he's right. And MSNBC will not detract anything. This analyst will face no consequences. Because when you're towing the establishment line and lying for the status quo, there are no repercussions. If ever there was a lie the other way around that hurt the status quo, they'd correct it. They'd correct that lie. But when it's a lie for the status quo, they ain't going to correct it. So good job, Glenn Greenwald, in calling this out. And once again, shame on you, MSNBC. They're not a news outlet. They're a PR firm for Comcast. Or, as Glenn Greenwald puts it, it's a dishonest political operation, not a news outlet. All right. So, we got two more things, and then we're going to go to you guys. Here's an interesting study, as we're having a little bit of rain here in California. Kids who spend their time in nature become happier adults. So, my fiance grew up on a campground. And she is a really... Lucy hears her. Lucy's meowing. My fiance grew up on a campground, spent a lot of time in nature. She's a very happy person. She has a positive outlook on humanity that I can't quite relate to the degree she has it. She's super hella optimistic. And, my curmudgeonness... I don't think that's a word. My crankiness, and I call it crankiness. Some would call it misanthropy, but I am not a misanthrope. I deep down at my core, I'm still an optimist. Just sometimes you gotta dig a little bit, and if I'm in traffic, you gotta dig even deeper. If I'm looking for a parking space, you gotta dig even deeper. If I'm reading the news, you gotta dig even deeper. And isn't it ridiculous? Just a side note here before we go back to the art. It's so ridiculous that we go through these smear pieces about Tulsi Gabbard, about Bernie Sanders, and these are just nonsensical, parroting, establishment talking point smear pieces. And every single day on this stream, I hear valid criticisms of both of those people from you guys. A random comedian on his live stream sees more valid criticisms about presidential candidates from strangers in a chat room than you can from the corporate media. What's that telling you? I mean, and I'll be the optimist. It says how freaking awesome you guys are. It says how freaking cool and awesome you guys are. But man, it also shows what a pile of shit our media is, doesn't it? I mean, come on. Like not only are you better off getting your news from YouTube, as Jimmy Dore likes to say, but man, in most cases you're better off from a chat room on a live stream than going to MSNBC. So anyway, Lucy's talking. I don't know if you can hear her. At this point, it seems the evidence is overwhelming. This is from this study that kids who spend time in nature become happier adults. New studies seem to arrive on our desks each week that suggest simply spending time in green spaces can improve our health, both mentally and physically. I feel like physically, of course that goes without saying. Well, I guess they just mean, like, not actually being, like, exercising outdoors, but just kind of being outdoors. As avid outdoors people, we instinctively know that, but it's always nice to have science confirm our suspicions. And recently, researchers from Aarhus University in Denmark published yet another study about the outside good health connection that may provide the most conclusive evidence yet. Getting outside, walking around, hearing the rustles of trees, feeling the wind on our face, the rain on our backs, the sun on our skin. The more we do that as kids, the happier we are as adults. So they did. They combed data from 1 million Danish residents. They looked at everything from income to educational level, history of family mental illness, as well as how much green space surrounded the residents that had grown up. So kids who grew up wealthier probably have more access to green space, for example. Yet even factoring those discrepancies in, researchers found that being raised surrounded by nature as a child meant a 55% lower incidence of developing mental health issues as adults. So they made sure that green space was a point of data. You know, they didn't just assume that someone had more access to green space than somebody else. They actually measured that. They made it a measurable variable in the study and concluded that people surrounded by green spacious children, 55% less likely. And I bet there is a lot of science that backs it up. People that spent more time outdoors had more exposure to vitamin D. Probably had more releases of dopamine and serotonin. And, probably kind of just took the time to let it in. When you're in nature, you kind of naturally become a little bit contemplative. I mean that sort of is just something that happens when you just spend the time in the greenery. That's why a lot of college campuses, they try to have a lot of green space when they can, because it's a good place to just sort of open your mind. And you can take special mushrooms to help you open your mind. You can, but, not during class. Don't do that. But, you know what I mean. So that makes total sense. And it's weird to think about because we live in an era where kids do not go outside as much, it seems like. And there's been studies on that. There's been some articles on that kids are spending more time just indoors with, with all the technology we have now. And I know I'm sounding like these kids, but, I notice less kind of pickup games when I'm going around my neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like I feel like when I was a kid, that was everywhere. And maybe it was because I was a kid, so I was participating in it. I'm sure that's part of it. But I feel like as the years have gone by, I see stuff like that less and less. Now granted, I live in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles area, but still there are neighborhoods around me, there are families around me, and I cannot remember the last time I had to slow my car down because there was a kickball game in the middle of the road that had to move out of the way. I live near a couple parks. I can't tell you when I saw kids playing in them, with exception to really young kids with their parents. I've never seen a pickup football game in the green space down the hill from my apartment. And again, this could just be where I live or me, but I feel like that's not as common of a thing as it used to be when I was a kid. And I don't think that's a good thing. I really don't. I think there's something to be said for just running around outside. And that's what I used to do. We used to ride our bikes. I don't know if kids do that anymore. Maybe they do. I mean, I have no idea. I don't have kids, but we used to just ride. That was a thing we would do. We would just get together. We're going to ride our bikes. We had no destination. We just got on our bikes and we just rode the frick around. Sometimes we would go to the local deli mart and get candy or something. Oh God, how much more? We used to go to the corner store and ice cream was a nickel and this is God, this is old man Ron. I was mentioning that I'm cranky and now I'm sounding like a total old man, just being we would ride our bikes. Our cars weren't invented yet. We didn't have electricity. We would ride our bikes. And I have a bike on my patio that needs new tires. And me and my fiance have been talking about replacing the tires on our bikes for months now, and we just haven't done it. I got to get new tires on that bike so I can ride around. And maybe some young will be like, "Hey, what's he doing?" They're like, "He's riding a bike." We should do that in packs. Maybe that'll happen. They'll be like, "That old guy on his bike." Or like, "You kids need to get outside. It'll help you later. A new study said so. Get your news on with Ron. And they're like, who the fuck's Ron? We don't care. Anyway, so that's a cool study. And it makes a lot of sense. So we're going to go here, and then this is going to be our conversation point for the end of the show. You guys know I am a cat lover. You guys know Lucy, and we'll get her to say goodbye today. So check this out. A new bill would ban cat declawing in California. Somebody tweeted this at me and wanted to know my opinion on it. Declawing is considered unnecessary and brutal by opponents of the practice. A bill that would ban the declawing of cats, a surgical procedure many consider cruel and unnecessary, has started its way through the California legislature. Declawing has been banned in many parts of the world and is illegal in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and 6 other California cities. So, what are my thoughts on this? First of all, I didn't know declawing was illegal in Los Angeles. I guess I didn't really need to know it because it's something I would never do. But now I know. I'm for it. I think that years ago, people weren't really cognizant of what declawing actually did. Because I feel like it's not very common anymore, and years ago it was more common. And I don't think it's because people were cruel or anything like that in most cases. I think it's because the general public just wasn't hyper aware of what declawing actually did. Because it does more than... It's not like you just take their claws out, which that in and of itself is a bit ridiculous. You also... Well, here, the article kind of sums it up better than I can. Let's see. Okay, all right, so we're going to... This is actually hard for me to read, but... Because I get weird when I get squeamish at stuff like this. When cats are declawed, the last joint on each toe is removed to prevent the claw from growing back. Many veterinarians have called the practice barbaric, causing unneeded pain and suffering and leading to unexpected complications. So the last joint on the toe is removed. So that way it doesn't grow back. The most common reasons given for declawing is to prevent cats from tearing up furniture or scratching their owners. But Jennifer Conrad, a veterinarian, says declawing is one of the most painful and unnecessary surgeries in all of veterinary medicine. If the bill is enacted, only licensed veterinarians performing the procedures for specific therapeutic purposes will legally be able to declaw a cat. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's... I am against declawing an animal. I just put covers on your furniture. Or something like that. Like put covers on your furniture. Or, do what I do. Make sure you only have shitty furniture. That's what I do. I've done that for years. I've just made sure that I just have furniture I don't really give a fuck about. And that has worked Lucy's entire life. I have intentionally... She's thanked me for it. She's like, thank you for not getting nice furniture. Because she thinks I can afford it. Lucy doesn't realize that that choice was easy for me. But I'm serious. I just don't, whatever. I don't... If I could afford a nice couch, I wouldn't get one anyway. Because if it's comfortable, I don't give a shit. There is one chair in my apartment now that has sentimental value to my fiance, and we do our best to try to make sure Lucy doesn't scratch that chair. We get her a scratching post. She has her cat tree, and sometimes she does like to scratch that, go figure, but, we just do our best to keep her off it. And that's that. So... I'd be for anything that outlaws declawing. I think a lot of people that declaw their animals, I don't think they're doing it from a space of cruelty. I think they're genuinely not hyper aware of what declawing actually is and what it actually does. I think they just think like, oh, they just cut the nail down to the point it doesn't really grow back. I think people honestly think that. So... yeah, I think if you outlaw it, then maybe it takes away that people making what I feel are poor decisions. Or at the very least, veterinarians can explain it to them so they know what it actually is. And I think it'd be cool if veterinarians kind of said, just so you know, we don't recommend it. We highly discourage it. But why not just outlaw it? So yeah, I'm all for a bill that outlaws declawing your animal. All for it. And I want to know what you guys think. What are you guys saying? Let's see. Declawing also causes behavioral disorders in cats. I have heard that. Paul Eisenberg, I can't cut my cat's nails. It's greatly traumatic for both of us. I just buy scratch pads. Me too. Actually, I have a funny. So Lucy is so not good with authority. She's just like me, and but. So my mom, at one point when I was on the road, Lucy stayed with my parents for a little bit. And my mom messaged me one day, or called me one day, and she said, hey, I made Lucy an appointment at the cat spa. This was in Pittsburgh where my parents live. And I said, that's a terrible idea. And she was like, why? And I was like, she's going to hate it. Lucy is going to hate it. And she said, no, it'll be great. And I'm like, okay. So my mom calls me 20 minutes later. My mom dropped Lucy off at the cat spa, and 20 minutes later got a phone call, and they said, this is the first time we've ever had to do this in 20 years. We need you to come get your cat. We can't give her the treatment. We got as far as trying to trim one claw. And by the way, somebody wants to say hello. Come here, sweetie. Hello, I have all of my claws. My owner wants me to have all my claws. I have all of them. I'll never be declawed. I have my scratching posts. Become a patron. So anyway, yeah, you were the first cat in history that the cat spa denied service to. You were in the newspaper. She wasn't. But she deserved to be. And so she's the sweetest cat when it's just on her terms. Like, she's never, like... She doesn't like children. That's the other weird thing about her. She hates children. It's the weirdest thing. But she's so mean to children. I think it's because she wasn't around them much most of her life. So when she meets one, she's confused that, like, there's humans like that, I guess. Like, I don't know. But she's mean to children. Super sweet to everybody else. But authority, children. Not a fan, this cat. But she's got all her claws, and that will never, ever change. So yeah, again, and I think a lot of people, they, Celeste says that's not weird for a cat to not like children. I guess it's not. Yeah, I guess because they kind of, sometimes, like, kids don't really know how to pet them, and, yeah. So Lucy says hi. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you saw it, but I posted a picture of her in her yellow vest. Come get your cat. Oh, the other time, I'll sell this real quick, and then we gotta go. But the other time, so when I first got Lucy, Lucy was a stray. And there she is. So Lucy was a stray. She ran into our house and enriched our life. When I say our house, I mean me and my college roommates. I was a senior in college. I lived in a party house with two of my buddies, and it was a damn good time. And we would throw parties. Lucy would just run around. It was a really cool time. And one day Lucy got out because she would just kind of go outside because she was a stray, basically. And she got out, and she was gone for like 2 weeks. I was super depressed. I cried every night. I was so scared she wasn't going to come back. And when she finally came back, I was like, I'm getting her fixed, and, you know, she's going to be an indoor cat. Like, I wanted to get her fixed anyway. I was just a broke college student, so I couldn't afford it. Now, fortunately for me, there was this low-cost neuter and spay mobile that was coming through the town of Bloomington, Indiana, and my mom loaned me some money to get Lucy fixed. So I was so stoked. And so me and my roommate drove to drop her off, and the way it was is they were gonna do the procedures on all the cats, and they're a very good service. They do really good work. I read up on them very thoroughly before taking her, and they provide a very essential service to underserved communities, and not that Bloomington is necessarily an underserved, but you know what I mean. Like it's a smaller college town, so there aren't a ton of low cost animal services, so they kind of provide a mobile one. And anyway, I take Lucy in, drop her off in the morning with all the other cats, and we were supposed to pick her up at 6 at night. We get a phone call, or I get a phone call, around 3 in the afternoon, and they go, so everyone's fine, Lucy's fine, the surgery was a success, she's good, but she's not really getting along with any of the other cats. We had to put her in her own area, and if you could get her a little sooner, that'd be great. And I was like, well, when do you want me to get her? And they go, now. So I say to my roommate, I'm like, we got to get Lucy. So we drive to the area, to the clinic, and it was like the scene in Silence of the Lambs where like Clarice walks down the cells and then sees him secluded by himself. I walk down these areas where these animals are just kind of, they're kind of laying, and they're all resting. Some of them are actually nuzzling and cuddling because they had just had the procedure done. They were kind of tired. They were recovering. So they're all just laying there peaceful and tranquil, and they're just sort of, some of them are kind of nuzzling each other affectionately. And then at the end of the hall, there's this animal secluded by herself, and she's pacing back and forth, just hammering each side of the cage and meowing at the top of her lungs. None of the other animals were making a peep. She was already recovered and over this fucking place. And that was this tough cookie right here. That was my Lucy. And as soon as she saw me, she started purring, and we took her home. And I was like, this is a fiery cat. I dig her. And we've been together since, huh, Luce? She's a tough cookie. She's a tough cookie. She is 12 years old. And this was the first time. The last time I took her to the vet was the first time where she got a shot, like she got a rabies vaccine, and it actually slowed her down. This is the first time in ever where it and when I say slowed her down, I mean for a half hour she was kind of aloof, which is totally normal for cats. It just was never the case for her. So she's finally at 12, slowed down a little bit. But then she was back to her normal self about 40 minutes later. So, right, Luce? So anyway, yeah, I'm all about it. If there was a bill that outlawed declawing, I'd be 100% for it. It's not necessary. And for people that are considering it, I know a lot of times people consider it because they don't really know what it does. Please be aware of what it really does. And please find a different alternative. Cover your furniture, have shitty furniture. Even if you have to, not let the cat everywhere in the house, even that's a way better option than declawing them. So I'm totally all for not declawing your animal. Guys, we are out of time. This has been Get Your News On with Ron. Thanks for being so freaking awesome. Thanks for bearing with me through the weird YouTube glitch that fortunately did not affect our show today, which is freaking awesome. Some tour dates coming up next week. Graham Elwin and I are going to be in the Gulf. We're going to be in Lafayette, Louisiana, Oxford, Mississippi. We're going to be in Pensacola, Florida, and New Orleans, Louisiana. Tickets available at ronplacone.com. Tickets are also available for the Progressive Comedy Tour in April in Texas, May, Salt Lake City, Boise, and June, East Coast. Grab those tickets, ronplacone.com. I'll be in Indianapolis May 1st. Tickets are available at ronplacone.com. If you can support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/ronplacone for a give what you can level. You get all kinds of exclusive content, including dialogues written by this one. Lucy's got her own dialogues in there. And thanks for being part of this, guys. Happy Music Monday. Happy Catterday. It's not Catterday, but, you know, whatever. How are those claws going, Lucy? You dig them? Peace, guys. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same channel. 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. It's been Get Your News on